fourth grade. You guys can walk. Show us how. Look at that. They do such a nice job heading to Kids Church. We're glad that we're grateful for those adults that are willing to do that week after week. And I'm confident that if you enjoy being around kids and you would like to be a part of that team that works with the Kids Church team during church, we put you in the rotation there, and we can mentor you and help you and coach you and teach you in that as well. And so, all right. Well, we're continuing in Elijah. There was a guy in New York City, and he steps out to he walks out of the hotel and goes right out to the curb. And as soon as he walks out to the curb, a cab pulls right up next to him, and he gets in the back of the cab, and he's like, man, he says to the cab, that worked out perfectly. As soon as I walked here, I was able to get right into the cab. And the cabbie turns around and kind of looks at him and says, yeah, that was a real Frank Feltner moment, wasn't it? He says, I'm not familiar. Frank Feltner? He says, oh, yeah. He says, Frank Feltner. Boy, let me tell you some things about Frank Feltner, right? He was an incredible guy. He was a gardener, and he could garden like nobody could garden. Nobody could garden like Frank could garden. The flowers were always perfect. The lawn was always perfectly kept. He was just an incredible guy. And the guy that's riding in the back said, oh, that's pretty incredible. He says, oh, yeah. And the captain says, Frank Feltner, he was not only a great gardener, he was a mechanic. He could keep anything running, the refrigerator running, the furnace running, the cars running. He was incredible. There was all kinds of things. If it was broke, he could fix it. He was absolutely incredible guy. And when it came to keeping things clean, he loved to clean. He'd get up in the morning, he'd clean, he'd make sure that the house was clean, the garage was always swept out. Frank Feltner, he was a cook. Nobody could cook like Frank Feltner could cook. He made the perfect recipe, and the meal was always fantastic. And the guy in the back seat's going, wow, this Frank Feltner guy, he's incredible. He's really incredible. He says, how long did you know Frank Feltner? He says, well, I never actually knew Frank Feltner. He died several years ago, and I'm the lucky guy that married his wife. Have you ever felt like maybe you don't quite measure up? You don't quite measure up. Well, that's a good question. You think about that. A lot of people didn't quite measure up. A lot of people didn't quite measure. You think about the people in the Bible, and they had a mountaintop experience, and then eventually it just wasn't quite like that after a little bit of time. Think about here's God. He's created the heavens and the earth and put mankind on it, and he's decided these people have all rebelled against me. They have all rejected me. I just need some guy. I need some guy that I'm going to be able to rebuild this thing. He finds Noah. And Noah was there, and sure enough, God saves all of mankind through Noah. And you think, what a fantastic guy Noah must have been. But then, if you read through the life of Noah, you discover that Noah ends up getting drunk and making some poor choices, and he kind of fell off the mountaintop. You think about David and Goliath. Who had more faith than David when he was going to go face Goliath, right? And he says, you can't make fun of my God. I'm going to stand here and defend my God. And he defeats Goliath. But then later on in life, we watch David's life, and he has an affair with Bathsheba and ends up killing her husband, Uriah, and the thing just kind of collapses and falls apart. You look at Peter. Peter, James, and John, they were the inner circle with Jesus. And Jesus brings Peter into private prayer times and private conversations with James and John, and he's teaching them, pouring his life into them. And we see over and over that Peter was a guy that would just kind of put his foot in his mouth, and he would declare, boldly, I'm going to follow God, and then he would fall off and have those moments in his life. We see these events, and they prove one point very, very clear. No one can live on the mountaintop all the time. No one can live on the mountaintop and God sends Elijah to go and communicate with the nation of Israel and Ahab and tell them, you guys have all turned your back on God. And so Elijah prays, and there's a complete drought. The rain just stops. And then maybe you remember that God sends Elijah off to the Kerith ravine, and he begins to shape him and mold him and teach him there. And then he sends him over into Sidon. That was Jezebel, hometown. And while he's there, he's being fed by this widow that God is providing for. And maybe you remember that there was an incident there where this widow's son dies, and Elijah prays and raises the boy from the dead. God does that. God does that. And then maybe you remember that God takes Elijah from Sidon and he sends him back. Ahab was the king of Israel. And Ahab was the guy that had led this entire nation away from God. And they had abandoned God. They didn't want anything to do with God anymore. And so God sends Elijah back to King Ahab and says, we're going to have a showdown between all of the prophets of Baal versus the one true God. And maybe you remember the showdown. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. And there were two altars that were there. And you prophets of Baal, you pray to your God, and I'm going to pray to my God. Whichever one lights the altar on fire. And sure enough, the prophets of Baal pray. Nothing happens. Elijah prays one simple prayer. The altar catches on fire, and it's incinerated and completely gone. And now maybe you remember that God brings justice to the land. Because all of the prophets of Baal that came from Jezebel's hometown, and that was Ahab's wife, and they've all been destroyed now. All been destroyed. And so Elijah's been running hard, and he's been doing these things for the Lord. And meanwhile, the whole time, all this stuff's been going down. And God's been communicating with Ahab. Where was Ahab's wife during all of this? Ahab's wife has been staying at home in the palace of the king and not really paying attention to the things that are going on. And so Ahab is about to go back and tell Jezebel exactly all of the things that have been happening in this land. And so we're going to pick up the story in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 5. It says this. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent messengers to Elijah and said, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them. In other words, Queen of Israel, Jezebel says, I'm going to use all my resources as the queen, and I'm going to find Elijah, and I'm going to kill him. That's what I'm going to do. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. Jezebel must have just been evil, wicked, dirty, mean, a nasty woman, because she cries out this threat against Elijah, and he wants to run for his life. And when he came to Beersheba in Judah, he's been running, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the desert. He said, you come with me so far, my servant, but now I'm going to go to a place where you don't even know I'm at. He is hiding from Jezebel. Right? And so he goes into the desert. He came to a broom tree. He sat down under it and prayed that he might die. Now God, he says, I have had enough, Lord. He said, take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. Listen to this. Elijah wanted Israel to turn around and go back to God. Elijah wanted Israel, the nation, to turn around and go back and be the people of God as they were always supposed to be. But it got the best of Elijah. It got the best of Elijah. He's been running hard. He's been trying to convince people and prove to people and show to people. He knows that he's got enemies that are working against him all the time. He feels alone. He feels beat up. He's in despair. And what does that mean? It means this. It means that if you are a Christian and you get down, you're normal. If you're a Christian and you feel like you've been fighting a good fight and you get down, you're normal. Everyone down? Why do we start to feel beat up and depressed and worn out and overwhelmed? And especially if you're a long-time Christian and sometimes you beat yourself up, you say, oh, I should have more faith. I should get closer to Jesus. I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't feel this way. Well, there's really some good reasons. There's some good reasons that in life we can begin to feel beat up and down. Beat up and down. Sometimes there are physical reasons for being down. The human body is made up of many mood-altering chemicals, and sometimes they can decide what they want to do all on their own. And sometimes that means the best thing that you can do when you are feeling down is to go see a doctor. Go see a doctor. Sometimes you're not going to be able to pray your way through feeling down. Sometimes you have to acknowledge something's not right in me and go get a good medical diagnosis, and maybe you find out that there are some chemical imbalances. And then maybe the doctor will say that these are some medications. We've studied these things for a long time. These things will help you. Maybe it just take a little while until maybe there's an imbalance there and it needs to be leveled off and balanced off, and you just need to stay on that just for the rest of your life because that's a part of your DNA. Sometimes we feel down and there are physical reasons for it. Sometimes the problem is circumstantial. We were not designed to live under constant stress all the time. Some of you, your work environment is constant stress all the time. Some of you have family history, and many of your family members are chronically they're ill, and there's cancer, and there's disease, and there's brokenness, and you feel the weight of the world as you're trying to take care of family members, and the circumstances are extremely, extremely difficult. Elijah lived under extreme circumstances. For more than 3 years after he had told Ahab that it wasn't going to rain there, he had been going from place to place and town to town, and he'd been running, and people were after him, and they didn't like him. And so listen, here's a question. Are you burning the candle at both ends? What happens? Eventually it comes together and it burns itself out. Some circumstances you are in control of. And you need to step up and say, because I am living my life the way I am, I need to begin to put some boundaries in place. And I'm not able to give and able to give and able to give all the time. I need to find some balance in my life. Sometimes the problems are physical. Sometimes we get down because of circumstances. And sometimes the problem really is all about your spiritual life. It's a spiritual problem that is inside of you. Remember David? We just mentioned him. David, he was a guy that is on top of the world. He's king. He's king of the most powerful nation on planet Earth at the time, the nation of Israel. He is the king. Yeah? Wouldn't it be cool to be the king just for a little while? Just be kind of like, bring me some more cake. You know, that'd be kind of nice. And some ice cream. Yeah, bring me that. Just have that. And go out into the gardens and kind of walk around and be like, yeah, will somebody pull up the Ferrari? I'm going to set up the ramp. I'm going to see if I can jump the Ferrari over the garbage cans, right? And you can do it because you're the king. Because you're the king. It'd be good to be the king, right? Who wouldn't want to do that? Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah? The kingly power. You guys don't seem to care at all about kingly power. But look at your face. You don't think that would be fun. I think it'd be fun. He's the king. David is the king. He's the king. Yet David, because he was king, took advantage of his power, potentially. He's on the rooftop, he looks down, sees a beautiful woman, and he sends for her. He's the king. And he digs a really deep hole, and he makes some really big mistakes. And he begins to feel the weight of the world as he begins to understand what I have done is sin against my God. What's he say? In the book of Psalm, chapter 51, verse 3 and 4, he says, For I know my transgressions. Man, I knew better. Shouldn't have done it. No wonder I feel the way I do. I'm sinning against God, and my sin is always before me. Against you, you only, have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight. So sometimes it's physical. You see a doctor. Sometimes it's circumstantial, and we need to manage our calendar a little better. And sometimes it's spiritual. And all of these things can work to putting us into a place where we can be depressed, down, sad, and beat up. We can see that being down is a part of life. Question: how do you respond when you get down? When you get down, do you stay down? How do you respond? And when you get down? Well, sometimes the way that people respond to being down is they begin to blame others, right? You ever kind of look around and, if my mate would just kind of step up and start doing things my way, then maybe I wouldn't be down, right? You blame your mate, or maybe if my kids weren't so rebellious and so this or that, and my kids, and so the reason that if they would just pay more attention or be better, or you have a boss at work, if you had a different boss, everything in your life would be better, right? Don't say anything, Laura. And so if you had a better boss, and everything in your life would be better. You ever blame God? You ever blame God? What was the lie? What was the lie of the snake, the serpent in the garden, right? You can't trust God. You can't believe God. He's trying to keep things from you. And then you begin to think, well, yeah, God, the reason I'm in this place is because of the way you made me. If I didn't have these desires, if I didn't have this chemical thing, the way you, it's your fault, God. And so how do you respond when you begin to be depressed and beat up and put down and you don't feel like getting out of bed? Do you blame? Do you blame others? Well, here's some good advice. Here's some good advice. It is better to admit that you are down. Just admit it. I'm down. This sucks. I don't like it. It's horrible. God, I need your help. I need your help, God, because I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know how to work through this. God, I need you to help me. That's what David did. That's what David did. He admitted it. God, I was wrong, and I need you. Psalm chapter 51, verses 10 through 12. David is all beat up, knows what he's done. Create in me a pure heart, O God. Don't you want one of those? I do. I want to be right with God. I feel better when I'm right with God. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence, or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. It is always best to give it back to God and let him have it completely. Elijah was a prayer. Elijah prayed, may the rain stop. God stop the rain. Elijah prayed something that no one on planet Earth had ever seen before. God, this child is sick, raise him from the dead. And it happened. Elijah was a prayer. Elijah looked at the whole nation of Israel. God told him to do it. He said, look at the whole nation of Israel, and we're gonna have a praying battle. Let them all pray and see if it starts on fire. Then you pray and see if it starts on fire. And he prays, and it starts on fire. You know what else? Elijah prayed? God, please kill me. Wow. How could somebody that has experienced all of the goodness of God, the power of God, you ever feel that way? I am beat up. This is too hard. I want out. I don't know how to get through. Man, he's sleeping underneath that broom tree, and the story continues. He's asleep under the broom tree, and all at once, verses 5 through 8, all at once, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then he lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for your journey is too much for you." God knows the journey you've been on is overwhelming you. He knows. It's not a secret. He knows it's overwhelming. Get up and eat. Your journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by his naps and strengthened by his food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. I think there's a couple of lessons in there. First lesson is, write this down in your bulletin. God gave him rest and refreshment. God, he said, this is the diagnosis, and I know what I'm going to prescribe. You need some rest, and you need to get something to eat. You need some refreshment. You're beat up, you're beat down. There was no lecture there. There was no, you should just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and keep on going, and because that's what a good Christian does, right? You don't have enough faith. You did none of that. Looks like what you need, brother, is just some rest. You need to eat well. Take a nap. Get refreshed. That's the best thing that you can do. Listen to what 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 and 20 tells us. "Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore honor God with your body." We cannot run our bodies into the ground and abuse them. We need to get rest. We need to take care of ourselves. Sometimes we need rest, eat well, exercise, go for a walk. Don't sit around and mope. Get around, move a little bit, and maybe get some endorphins to flow through you, and that is the medicine of God that is coming your way. This is what Jesus had to say about it. Matthew 11. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Find rest in Jesus when you're down and you're beat up. Here's another lesson. God reminds Elijah to simply trust him. I don't know exactly how I got myself in this situation, and I'm beat up, I'm scared, I'm alone, but I'm going to trust you, God. That's all I got the strength to do is just say, "God, I trust you in this circumstance." The story continues. 1 Kings chapter 19, 9 through 18. "Then he went into a cave and spent the night after Elijah traveled 40 days and 40 nights. And the word of the Lord came to him, 'What are you doing here, Elijah?' He replied, 'I have been very zealous for you, Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and they put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too.' The Lord said, 'Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by.' Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord." You ever been in a really powerful windstorm? Years ago, I lived in Arizona, and they have a monsoon season, and I was driving down the road, and I could see it in my rearview mirror. This big cloud, dusty dirt ball full of rain comes over, and I pulled my car off to the side of the road, and as it overtook and you couldn't see the front of the hood, the wind, the car started to rock, and it was one of the scariest things I'd ever experienced. The wind just about moved. It felt like the car was going to tip over, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. You ever been in an earthquake? And my wife grew up in California, and I lived in California for 9 years. I've been in several earthquakes, and some of them are intensely scary. If you're up on the third floor of a building, and I remember it just feels like lift the building up and slam it back down. Lift the building up and slam it back down. Everything in there is rocking. I've been in earthquakes that are so severe that as you're driving down the road, you can feel the road sway. And those kinds of earthquakes that I've been in, bridges collapse and people die, and they're tremendous. After the earthquake came a fire. And a fire. Elijah had just seen what a fire can do. A fire can burn up wood, can burn up a sacrifice, it can burn up rock, it can burn up dirt, and literally tongues of fire can just lap up water like it is nothing. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. Just a gentle whisper. A gentle whisper. The all-powerful God shows up in a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he knew it was God. He pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, same question, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for you, Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant." It means they've rejected you, God, and your commandments. That's exactly what that means. We're not going to live the way you want us to live. And they've broken down the altars, and they put the prophets to death with the sword. And I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. The Lord said to him, in a whisper. He was depressed. He was down. God shows up and communicates to him in a whisper. Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. But when you get there, I have a plan. When you get there, Hazael, king of Aram, it says, anoint Hazael, king of Aram. It says, also anoint Jehu, son of Nishmi. He says, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha. Listen to what he's going to do. Elisha, son of Shaphat, he says, from Aram, he says, Abel Mahol, he says, why? To succeed you as prophet. He says, I can see you're tired, see you're overwhelmed, but here comes Elisha. Elijah, here comes Elisha. He's going to be the one that's going to follow in your footsteps. So he gives him a future and a hope that is out there. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael. That means there's going to be justice. There's going to be justice for these people that have led the entire nation away from God. And he says, and Elisha will put to death any who escape the sword of Jehu. Yet I reserve 7. He says, yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all who did not bend the knee, did not bow down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him. He says, Elijah, there's something you need to know. He says, justice will come, and the future is in my hand. I have a plan. I am in control. The message that God gave relationship with Jesus Christ? Are you down? Are you depressed? Do you feel beat up? Do you feel like the other side is winning? Do you feel like the nation has turned its back on God? And do you feel like there is no hope and there is no future? Be reminded, God has a plan. God is in control. And we can trust God. Rest in Him. Rest in Him. How do you rest? How do you rest in Jesus? Well, here's how. First, you need to know that you are in Jesus in order to rest in Jesus. Which begs this question. Are you in Jesus? What's that mean to be in Jesus? That just kind of sounds weird. Are you in Jesus? Are you in Jesus? Is Jesus in you? What's that look like? How does that happen? Well, you're familiar with the Trinity. God is the